Monday, the 2nd of May, 2022. Good morning. So, make sure to like my official YouTube video for my official YouTube channel. And it's the ornery PSA, Reverend Susan Ling. Because you can check that out on my website, www.susanmeling.com, because all of the videos I record are for my official YouTube channel, as I have said. So that way it's clear, because that's how I've already done so. I've clarified that each and every time. That's why I say my official YouTube channel for my official YouTube links on my website, that whole thing. So that way, that's always been clear this entire time, since essentially really beginning in the year of 2020 because of the time frame. And so since the situations in 2020 that went the way it did, and as creating for my official YouTube channel, for my work that I've been doing for myself to promote my stuff, so that way I could actually do what I'd actually prefer instead. See, while there are these lectures that I've been giving, I actually don't prefer to do that. That's something I actually haven't preferred to do. That's something some people might be surprised by. I wouldn't know, but yes, I actually haven't preferred to do things this way, because it's a personal preference as to what I'd actually prefer to do. Though, since there hasn't been anybody to actually speak with in person, face-to-face in person, because again, preferences, that's the facts. And so while the situations have gone the way they have, that's kind of the reality that I've brought forward a time or two. Like such as in my updates on my journal blog, the ornery PSA, my website, www.susanmeling.com. However, since the situations have been as they have over the time frame, that's how that's been. And so while some people might think that whatever aspect of games, I don't like games. I haven't ever liked games, and that's just the way I've been since I was a child. And since only in reference to the time frame when my son that I gave birth to and my daughter that I gave birth to were of the biological minor age of under the age 18, that was the only time I'd allow it, because I despise games. I always have. There was this male I dated who tried to get me to see any value or worth to games, and I just couldn't. So this male, those who have read Finding a Silver Lining in reference to the garage problem, he tried to get me to actually like games, because he knew I couldn't deal with the digital aspects. So, having to stare at the cell phone when recording doesn't assist my headaches or migraines at all, whatsoever. So doing this sort of lecture stuff doesn't assist me in any capacity. Not something I personally enjoy at all, whatsoever. Nothing about it I personally enjoy at all, not in the slightest. Those recording sorts of stuff inside of where I live is not acceptable to me. It's my preference, my right to choose. I don't mind going out, then there's those problems regarding those types of people, which that's not considered a fan to me. Because if you were actually a fan of what I've put together, I wouldn't have to deal with certain things. It's kind of how that would go, because as a fan, you would understand from the knowledge as to what that would actually be to me in comparison. And so, but that is as it is, because there are those realities in those particular references, because I actually know myself. And so what my particular preferences are, obviously, are not necessarily what other people think. And so this individual, as far as Cactus Jack, also known as Jeffrey Kirkendall Jr., he had some friends he had that did this role-playing thing. Some of you might know what that is. And I didn't like it. From the description, there wasn't anything about it that seemed interesting in the slightest at all to me. So he tried to convince me that I would, if I just would take a moment. So I said, give me the damn book. These are my actual words. Give me the damn book. I will read it. What is the goal? And he said, well, you either kill everybody or you make everybody yours. That's it. It's the only options. He said, yes. So I read it, created a character, whatever. So those of you who do the role-playing thing, so I walk in, and my hair a bit different in the shade of red because of my personal preference and comparison. And so I walk in and, meet these males. There's about 7 or 8 of them. And they're all biological adults. I was so confused seeing this. I hadn't ever imagined that this would actually be a thing. So they explain how much time and effort they put into this. And I just couldn't believe it, that they actually spent that much time. And so Cactus Jack had this voice changer, and I just was disgusted at the sight of it. I was disgusted the entire time. There was nothing except for the house that was worthwhile. And so, but I was kind. I did as best as I could. And so, this little role play dice something another. And so, the whatever, that did whatever, did the whatever of whatever. And, they went around the table, and so they started with the male who was on my right. I was the last to make whatever in that regard, because, I was the new one, And so for those who understand that role-playing thing, and it was like, oh, no, so what is, no, that's fine. Is this how you, because I was the only female, for those who understand that. And so the male on the right side of me, he goes, and they go around the little table, they do a little dice something another, and then they get to me. And the whatever guy says something, and I explain myself as far as whatever, and then everybody that was there, some of them started crying. Because half of them I killed and the rest were mine. And so apparently this whatever had been going on for years. And with just one move, done. Yeah, half of them were dead, the other half were mine. I owned them. And I was like, wow, So that's all that was? Huh, well that went quicker than I thought it would. The guy who had created the little game thingamabob, apparently it was going on for several years. Could not believe that someone who had not ever done a role-playing game ever. First, I think it was the Warhammer thing or something. I don't know. It was something. And everybody was so upset. And it was one of those, I told you I didn't want to do it. I told you I didn't like games. I told you that I was not a fan of this stuff. I told you that I didn't want to have any a part of it. I told you that this was not going to go well. I told you I wasn't interested. And I told you that if this was actually going to go whatever, I was going to do what I could to fully just Mortal Kombat. And that's what happened. And so I won. And for those who know the supposed to be adult consenting lifestyle community, as far as knowing I'm a leather dominant, I got sprinkles called their tears. It was great. So I figured, I have my little glitter on my skirt, and so for those who are into that sort of stuff, don't try to make someone who doesn't like games play a game. That's the moral of the story. It's really the moral of the story. So, because you'll regret it. Because yeah, it'll be like that. Someone who doesn't like, I warned. Yes, I did. I'm a little bit CDO. Just by a lot. I don't like games. Yeah, so that's why in regards of what was supposed to be called guardian assholes, I made sure to clarify that it was only supposed to be at a specific location because they had brought up this thing called improv. And so after certain situations, which I was informed, it was only supposed to be at a specific location at a specific time, nowhere else. And so there were these situations that occurred during my Medal of Honor art project trips. And I hate games. So I can play pool. I can do that. That I don't mind. That's different though, because it's literally, that's it. It's extremely CDO when you think about it. This is the location, nowhere else. That's it. So Cactus Jack, also known as Jeffrey Kirkendall Jr., he has a little brother named Jeremy Kirkendall. And Jeremy decided he was going to go in the army after he had watched the 9/11 documentary that I had allowed him to borrow. And so, they were both a part of the little 151 Road Warrior Mad Max situation regarding the Alamo Draft House in San Antonio. I have no idea about this movie at all, whatsoever. I make attempts to explain to people, get this guy to tell all these people, because I was like, I don't know who to tell. I don't know what law enforcement, so I actually had a law enforcement guy who would show up to my house. I made attempts to explain the situation I was in. I actually got my Great Dane from him. I got Ganesh from him. I was like, listen, here, he has a funny story to tell you that's real. Could you and so I literally was like, here. And so ironically, Cactus Jack was like, hey, I got this t-shirt. And he actually did. He had a 151 Road Warrior t-shirt. And like, here, law enforcement officer guy, here's a present. Here you go. And the whole explanation as to how everything occurred, the entire neighborhood, as far as the cul-de-sac, they were all informed as to what I was dealing with. Did they actually assist at the time? That would have been common sense. That also would have been intelligence. Yeah, that would have, and humanity. And so, but it was a homeowners association location, so and so the law enforcement guy, he did and so then there was IHOP on Bandera and 410, and there was a guy, this waiter, which is irony because I used to work at IHOP, not that one in Illinois, and so I'm like, hey. I was totally not a ninja, by the way, okay? So, the guy, I had been at that IHOP multiple times, and the guy was just like, hey, Susan, what's going on? It's like, hey, you are from San Antonio, totally not ninja. Directly in plain sight. And the guy's like, yeah, born and raised here, da-da-da. Cool. So, you know about that. And so, Cactus Jack goes and explains to this guy the situation. I'm like, yeah, this is that. And so, about my head injury on Palm Sunday in 2000. And he's like, yeah, you had a blood on your brain and stuff like, yeah, it's still there. Still there back then in 2006. It was 2006. The guy's like, it's starting to show some signs of improvement in the MRIs and CAT scans, but it's still there. Yeah, I had an EEG and an EKG a couple whatevers ago, and whatever. And so the guy's like, well, why did you forget? I'm sorry, did you forget that I'm from? No, it's important that I ask you this. And he's like, okay, so you should look at his shirt. And Cactus Jack goes, yeah, and he's all proud to show off this 151 Road Warrior shirt. And the guy's like, oh my God, Susan. I'm like, so hi, how you doing? He's like, okay. And I'm like, yeah, so you should totally ask him about this 151 Road Warrior thing. And so Cactus Jack, in the middle of this IHOP, tells everybody, yeah, and I'm like, yeah, totally not a ninja, but magic! Ta-da! Gonna do a little bit of light here, there you go. And because of the arrogance, he's like, yeah, and then, planned this, and, and then Cactus Jack is like, and can you believe, I can believe this, by the way, I can believe this. So Cactus Jack, also known as Jeffrey Kirkendall Jr., tells this waiter, after he explains whatever the Mad Max vehicles and gear and stuff like that, and driving around the 410, 1604 loop and the whole kit and caboodle of Military City, USA and stuff like that, goes and tells him, yeah, can you believe that the actor that was going to be at the Alamo Draft House during the week of Fiesta, can you believe that he didn't wait around for us to show up? I can believe that. I totally can. I saw a couple of pictures, and so to make a little notation to myself, because it was like, okay, maybe this will, something of something, because I had actually believed that I could go through the past area of my Facebook account to actually find that. However, maybe Facebook can't, because, Facebook. And so, here's this picture that he specifically said was 151 Road Warriors something of something. I think this is pretty bad. However, and so I tell this waiter guy, and I'm like, yeah, there's 5 military bases. I'm about life. I don't know about how much self-control as far as, I mean, those guys, they are much better than I. And here's the proof, I'm telling you, inside San Antonio, Texas, because if I was one of those types of guys, this is what would happen in a different capacity. Here's a symbolic reference. Here you go. Yeah, magic. Because if I was one of those guys, like let's say I had graduated basic training and I saw that from like the hilltops or whatever, I mean, I would, so as a clarification, way back when, before my head injury on Palm Sunday in 2000, this is when I was living in New Jersey. So the youth group that I was in at Old Tenet Presbyterian Church, I had not ever fired a firearm before. Okay, so we go to this BB gun range, okay? And the only experience I have is these firearms my biological father had in the corner between the dresser and the nightstand, and then one in a dresser drawer. And so, and then what happened? You know, because it was a football field-sized property, so, you know, I learned what happens with that. And so, you know, never shot anything, personally. I'm a teenager at this time. I think I'm 14, maybe 15 years old. And we're on this, I think it was a YMCA location, I think maybe in the Poconos somewhere. And we're given these little BB guns, well not little, these BB guns. And I'm like, okay. And so, you know, because I am the way I am, I just start playing with it. Because why not? There wasn't any bullets in it, so it's like, oh, well, you know, da-da-da-da, and I'm just flipping it around and just doing sorts of whatever. And then, you know, the guy who's giving whatever directions, and I'm just like, do-do-do-do-do-do, you know, like, whatever. Whatever. And the guy's like, oh, you're pretty experienced with that, although, you know, it's really good at, you know, that's not loaded. And I was like, what do you mean? And the guy was like, were you just doing a rifle drill? And so I have it now, at this point I have it at my side and I'm holding the barrel. And I was like, what's a rifle drill? And the guy's like, what you were just doing? No, this is a BB gun. That's not a rifle, is it? And the guy was like, okay. So, you know, we get the little BBs to put in this thing. And he shows us how, you know, you pump it a few times and stuff. And so I had just finished woodworking in middle school. And I had a competition where I beat the instructor for the class as far as weight. And I'm a little smidgen upset that I wasn't going to mast at the time. And so with the Navy attachment. And so, you know, I got the little BB thing and so, you know, I pump it a few times like they say. I take aim and get the center of the target. So then I think to myself, because I've done that before then and even now, and so I noticed that the paper didn't move. Well, that annoyed me. Why didn't the paper move? Usually when wind goes by, paper will move. So I pump it a few more times because I was informed that if you pump it a few times, it'll have more power. Well, you know, those who know home improvement show. More power. Always better. And so in my thoughts, I'm hearing Tim the Toolman Taylor, only I have a firearm. And then with each pump, it's like, because I'm that person as a child. And so I take aim again and I hit the target and it's like, but it didn't move. And we're gonna be at this area for like 2 hours. Well then. Really? 2 hours. Well, I have some time to tinker with this. We each have these little, whatevers, and it's like, well then. I was determined to make that paper move. I was very determined. Well, when I finally get it to the point, now I have pumped it so many times, and this is obviously probably not considered safe. However, I put my foot on the butt, or the whatever it's called, the wood part, and I am pushing, like I have to use both hands to actually just to get that last one, like I don't know how many times. And so I got the paper to move. Well, we have an hour and a half left. Now I'm actually bored. So I decide so there's like, it's like a 15 or 20 lane thing. Well, I wanted to go to mast with the Navy attachment. I'm gonna go in the military. One of the 5 branches, I'm gonna do it. Because I've had my nightmares, so I'm gonna protect where I can as far as the United States of America. Save the world. I am determined. And so, well, start at the left lane and make my way across. And my goal is to hit the center target of each one. And this is Jim. And so, take aim. And okay, I didn't go to graduation to, my basic training. And it is what it is. And so I get bullseye, lane 1. Bullseye, lane 2. Bullseye, lane 3. Bullseye, lane 4. Bullseye, lane 5. Bullseye, lane 6. I think I was in lane 7, so I just did it just for fun. Got it. Bullseye, lane 8. Bullseye, lane 9. Bullseye, lane 10. Bullseye, lane 11. Bullseye, lane 12. Bullseye, lane 13. As I go to load, that is when the YMCA guy goes, "Excuse you, what do you think you're doing?" Well, and so I explained this to him. "Why are you shooting?" And well, why not? Apparently it was considered bad form. And I disagreed. Because I got the bullseye in each one, so I disagreed that was bad form. And so, while this whatever guy is trying to explain to me that it's bad form, I am disagreeing with him because I got the bullseye in each of the lanes. When I first started out, okay, I had the 3 hits as far as the bottom right corner, but after that it was pretty much in the center 3 rings by technicality. So I am arguing with this guy who is trying to tell me that it is bad form to do that. No, that is pretty good. I'm fairly certain. And so, okay, what is there to... I didn't understand why I was in trouble at all. To this day, actually, to be honest, I don't understand why I was in trouble. Because I don't see how that was bad form at all. I would consider it bad form if I missed. That would be what I would consider. So then, after a while, he explains, no, bad form means, you well, why didn't you just say that I wasn't supposed to do that? Why would you say it was bad form? That's obviously not bad form. And so he was like, yeah, you're supposed to just stay in your lane. Well, I was bored. I mean, seriously. And so he was like, he got angry, and he was like, why would you be bored, da-da-da. So he had everybody pull the little clothesline rope, essentially, to bring in the targets. And I, pull mine down, and here you go. And he looks at it and he's like, wow. And he looks at a few of the other people and he puts his hands over the paper and he goes, is she telling the truth? And they're all, mm-hmm. Yeah, and they all know Mike and Anna, and they're like, yeah, no. Yeah, no, because we would have been in that particular aspect as far as in the state of New Jersey, and then because of those particular factors. And he's just like, wow. And they're like, what's the problem? And he's like, so I don't know why you didn't go to math. I don't know. I mean, maybe if I mail this to Marine and Science Technology School, they'll reconsider. I could be pretty valuable. I'm fairly certain. I think that's a little bit of an asset when you think about it. But the guy was just like, yeah. Oh wow. Are you? Wow. It is what it is. Even Grandpa Gavitt wouldn't allow me to do that. So there's that clarification for people who know. And so, although if my Grandpa Gavitt was alive at that point in time, he would have been so proud. He actually would have been proud that I had done so. And then he would have agreed with me because, sometimes, it is what it is. So, Anyway, so back to fast forwarding in regards of 2006 and 2007 and all that. Then get to 2008 and it's like, hey, DFW, hello? Like, okay, so in San Antonio, Texas, they were like, we don't know. And so like, do you guys know anybody? Do you have any idea? Hello? And that's what is this? So I was made fun of because of not knowing pop culture. Everybody that knew pop culture and was into this Mad Max or whatever, they're like, oh, that's whatever. It's like, I really disagree. I see this being an issue. I don't know how it's not considered an issue. It seems quite frightening, because, I mean, what do you do? This seems frightening. I don't know how any of you don't see it as frightening, and no matter who, with the exception of the IHOP waiter. And at one point in time, the IHOP waiter, we go in, and the IHOP waiter guy, I can't remember his name, he walks up and he goes, hey, Susan. And I was like, hey, and mind you, the little role-playing total winner. Tell him about that, and he's like, oh, good to know. Oh my God. And I'm like, yeah, so totally did that. And he's like, yeah, that kind of doesn't seem like it'd be a surprise at this point, because wow. And he goes, I need to tell you something, especially now that you told me you don't like, yeah. He goes, so I know you don't like games. Total winner though. Did this. He goes, yeah, so I play Zelda. What's that? He was like, you just need to remember, my friends and I play Zelda. And so in IHOP, it's just like, what is this? What is, okay, fine, cool. What is up with these games? I just don't understand. This is so weird. And he was like, yeah, I know a few guys, and so you just need to remember, my friends and I, we play Zelda. It's what you need to remember. That's it. I forget stuff. He's like, yes, as long as you can remember. So he had to tell me I don't know how many times. And so however many times of going into IHOP until however many times before when he would say, so what game did my friends and I play? Zelda! And he's like, yes, okay. Wow, that's, ooh. And so, however many times. My bank would know how many times. I have issues remembering. I have memory that's cognitive disorders. And so, that's how bad the after effects of my head injury were. And so, but just think, as far as the memory portion, just think about my headache and migraine pain levels in that reference, for those who would understand that. That's that. Yeah. So I'm not a fan of the game stuff. It is what it is. So, but it's known as far as what happened regarding Excalibur Fair. Okay. There's the 2020 Austin situation, which was just, that was as it was, that's the thing. And so, that's, it is what it is. It is what it is. Stayed as calm as I could, that whole situation. And so I wound up in Washington State after a few situations, such as my scuba diving. Where I earned 26 scuba diving certifications. Now, in the year 2019, this guy, in reference to Cozumel, he on a phone call. Now, first, I had spoken with one of the guys from 9 Lives Books about my scuba dive because it was near the time frame that I had set, because those who know certain things, and having been medically retired from the Army with a blue ID card, there's certain factors that were explained to me at Fort Sam Houston. And so, in the year of 2000. And so, I speak with Michael about the scuba dive as far as the depth level, and he says, well, online it says it's like 193 something or whatever. I'm like, yeah, that's nice. Yeah, but that's not, like, all you have to do is go to the Lexington and you'll know that you actually can't have that close because of the water when it moves, when the boat goes by, and other stuff. And he was just, it is what it is. It's like, yeah, except this is the reality. I dealt with what I dealt with, but that doesn't mean you have any right to add any needless problems in any capacity of. Not just in reference to, it's more of an overall situation. Where just because I've dealt with what I've dealt with does not translate that I'm willing to deal with that anymore. No, that translates to that's a problem in comparison to doing any of those needless problems any further. That's what that actually translates to. So I wouldn't ever view anybody who would cause any needless problems as appreciating anything that I've done at all. So all the stuff that I went over regarding the updates in my journal blog, the Ornery PSA, on my website, www.susanmealing.com, the Modern Day book, my book section, and the culmination of all that stuff, where I understand from what's been explained to me regarding certain types of situations, which that doesn't translate to me any fan or appreciation of. To me, that's no different than the situation regarding that Mad Max factor. So, if you can understand in regards to why that actor wasn't at the Alamo Draft House regarding the 151 Road Warrior situation, well, in certain regards, maybe you can understand in reference to my Medal of Honor art project trips. Or, that being truthful, following those 10 Commandments situations, that sort of honesty and genuinity, that would show appreciation in comparison to what I have dealt with in those capacities up. Because that sort of stuff that would be to me the same for that metaphor. That's what that would be to me. So while some people may think in the reference of that 151 Road Warrior, in my viewpoint, as to my opinion, I have the viewpoint regarding that Mad Max, whoever he was, in regards of all of that, in every capacity, because that's not what I would ever find respectful or appreciative of my work. It's just the facts. I've brought this up, I've clarified it and verified through the updates regarding my journal blog, The Ornery PSA, on my website, www.susanmeeling.com. So that situation, in regards to the length of time of what I have dealt with, that's a problem. So if there are those in local type or state type or federal type or what have you that could see a problem with the 151 Road Warrior situation and could understand why that actor and what have you regarding the Alamo Draft House Mad Max watching of the movie situation, there's people who could understand why that guy left and could understand in reference to the law enforcement doing what they could to find, a legal way. Maybe, just maybe, there are some people who could understand my personal stance in regards of everything that I have dealt with in those capacities. Because while some people might think in the capacities of Cactus Jack and his brother Jeremy Kirkendall Jr., those ways, that's not how I view things. I view things more along the lines of that actor and the San Antonio police officers. Yeah, and probably even part of the reason why it's called Military City, USA. Yeah, because what would be considered respectful and actually appreciating my work would not be that. So there's Montana for the first trip in the year of 2017. Other trips, Iowa 2018, stuff like that. Yeah, and then, the situations regarding 2019. Those factors. Yeah, so maybe that metaphor of that situation might make a bit more sense. As to all those journal blog updates on my website, www.susanmeeling.com. And so, while some people might have whatever their feelings are as to their opinions, that's kind of the point. your feelings and your opinions as to the hypotheticals of proof. Well, this is my viewpoint. So then there's the situation regarding my scuba diving. And where has that actually been correctly, genuinely, in the accurate ways of actual appreciation for my work? It would not be in the references as to certain situations at all. To actually do that in the correct capacities. So while some people might be embarrassed, that means nothing to me when I have dealt with what I've dealt with. When my son and my daughter, as minors, dealt with what they dealt with when, as their mom, the only surviving parent they had and have, that does not show that appreciation at all. So I was listening to the Joe Rogan Experience on YouTube, the official channel of, and he was talking about Jeffrey Epstein, and then there's Jeffrey Kirkendall Jr., and that sort of set of problems, if there's any correlation. And then whatever the female's name, and that. Although there's additionally also the Club Femme group, as to, I don't know what Jason and Renee and those references, and or other Club Femme females as to those references, and that includes and extends to the Guardian Assholes show and that hypothetical, because consent is actually required, and it has to be informed consent. Because if it's not informed, there's no way I can give consent, because I would not ever consent to certain things because of my background. And so, while some people might think that that would be considered acceptable, well, I did author these 2 books, and if you understand in this reference, that's nice that you would think that that would be acceptable. That's nice. In comparison to my viewpoint and my rights. So that's nice. So in the year of 2012, in a different garage situation, those who know Discordia, or Erica, she had informed me she had looked at my FetLife profile and saw my pictures. I was, okay, whatever. And she had pointed out certain aspects regarding my scuba diving work, which I obviously was upset about that U-Haul situation. And she had informed me that she knew me in the year 2004. And I didn't recognize her. You know, the after effects of my head injury on Palm Sunday in 2000, and she said, yeah, I know. And I was like, then why would this, whatever? Well, apparently, since she wanted to confess, so for those who know Discordia, known as Erica, and then she was dating a guy named Brian at the time, that sort of thing. She had, with the 2 daughters and a son in San Antonio, so she had said that she was envious of me. And it didn't make sense to me because I know me. I know what I've dealt with and all that. And so she felt the need to confess that from the time frame of 2004, she was playing a game because she wanted to be in a competition with me in the lifestyle which made absolutely no sense to me. And so, because of the only ways I could view what is supposed to be the consenting adult lifestyle, whether in reference to BDSM and or swinger aspects, she had been a pro, apparently, as she informed me. She was a pro on both sides. She had been a pro in what is supposed to be the consenting adult lifestyle regarding swinging. She had been a pro there, as far as those understanding. And then she also had been a pro in the BDSM aspects of what is supposed to be the consenting adult lifestyle. And I did what I could to remain calm as Lisa and her lawyer husband, for those who know. She had glasses and hair about to here, and her husband was tannish in complexion, and Alicia was there. We were all in the garage, and the garage door was open. And so Discordia, or Erica, had said that from 2004, she had been competing with me and was surprised that I didn't know. So throughout this time, she was surprised that I didn't ever recognize her, and she actually felt insulted because I didn't recognize her. Which, remember, that subarachnoid hemorrhage in the frontal lobe of my brain when talking with that IHOP guy, that waiter, in 2006 and 2007, was still in view of the MRI and CAT scan. So from 2004, which is 2 years before then, obviously that subarachnoid hemorrhage in the frontal lobe of my brain would have been bigger in comparison. And so she had complained to me in that garage. She complained that I didn't recognize her anywhere. She had changed her clothing, and she was upset that I didn't recognize her. I didn't even remember meeting her. And so that made her upset. And she was telling me about her feelings. So I've gone over that as far as my opinion about feelings. This is the same female in regards of those 3 millennials at UTSA that, the one little ginger red hair curly female that went to go climb the ladder at the pool. That one with a male that was a little taller and he had brunette hair, and then the other one that I believe she was Hispanic and had glasses, and she liked Ken, that had been Alicia's roommate at one point in time. That one? Those 3, yes. And so Erica, also known as Discordia, she was telling me how since 2004, having met me at Grady's, how long? And so she had been a part of all these different what have yous, which anybody who would know, okay? And so she was surprised. And that was when she decided to believe me about the after effects of my head injury. She actually said she wanted to congratulate me that after, from 2004 through 2012, that I had convinced her. When I wasn't doing there wasn't anything at all. There wasn't not one thing that I was doing to ever convince anybody. So from 2004 to 2012, in the city of San Antonio, out to DFW, and Austin, back to the DFW area, and then to San Antonio, this is what she was doing. Apparently her dad had been a resident, something another lead at Johns Hopkins Hospital, and she had wanted her dad's attention. And so, what could that ever? She actually acknowledged that she had done stuff to annoy her mother, so that way because she thought she could actually go into the same location that he was working, and didn't understand that there were moral and ethical codes that were supposed to be in the location to protect biological family from those types of needless situations. So then there's Mike, Anna, and Patricia, as well as my ex-in-laws that would automatically be exempt and not allowed to ever have anything because of these laws. And it was very interesting to learn that. And so, but I told her that before she went into this, I said, well, because of knowing how I don't do certain things, well, you probably won by what it would take to that, for my viewpoint, as far as whether in regards of swinging or BDSM. And so in that time frame, she had gotten to over 10,000. That was when she decided to stop counting, which she won. I told her, congratulations, you definitely won. I don't know if that's something to be proud of. However, congratulations, you won, I suppose, if that's the viewpoint you're looking for, I suppose. So, you know, she was then surprised that I was upset. Yes, because she had brought up different situations in a multitude of locations. I stopped listening, I'll be honest, because she tried to clarify certain things as to what specific, and I just saw red. That's it. Everything was red. So there's this earlier official YouTube video of mine where it's like the white whatever, and then you have like the trace lines in that filter and stuff. Just pretend it's red. And that's what I saw. Everything, everywhere. That was it. I was done. I had literally just dealt with Irving a little bit before then. Then there was, the move to San Antonio. Then there was what I dealt with in regards of my daughter at Fort Sam, Houston. Then there was the situation on top of that regarding Taco Cabana. And then, the 4th of July. And so I just saw red. That was it. That was because she felt the need to confess. Because she felt her feelings would be important to me. Yes. She thought that I would be capable to understand. In comparison to ever thinking that I would be upset. She was actually surprised that I was upset. And so I don't know how she couldn't tell that at some point I would be upset. However, she was surprised. She was very surprised. She was just shocked. She couldn't believe that I would be angry at all, whatsoever. She thought I'd actually appreciate it because, because she could. I don't remember what she said. I was doing what I could to just breathe, because in the time frame, essentially around July 2011, maybe June of 2011, through to that point in time, so less than maybe might be 13 months total, 13-month cycle. I had all of that, and then everything in between occur. And so I was, then there was the Dallas Galleria sometime before then on top of that. And just, I was upset. I was very angry. And the irony is, so Alicia and Lisa and her husband, they asked me if I was okay because they could not tell what I was thinking. And they had noticed that I was not smoking a cigarette. And they asked me if I wanted one. And I asked, why would I want to do that? So for those who smoke, and those who have known me, and those who understand those stress factors, I asked why I would want to smoke a cigarette because I was a little teeny tiny, so tiny, just a tiny, small, itsy bitsy fairy sized, teeny tiny bit enraged. And so I didn't understand why I would need a cigarette. And Lisa had said, because maybe that might help you calm down. And I asked, whatever would you mean? Do I look upset to you? And she said, you're frighteningly calm. You are absolutely frighteningly calm. Why is that frightening to you? And she had said because of what Discordia, also known as Erica, had explained. And so it was one of those, well, I don't know why you would be frightened. Is there something that you might be frightened over? And she just, no, not right now at this moment, just frightened in an overall sort of way because you're so calm. Why is that frightening to you? That I could keep myself calm in this situation. And Erica, also known as Discordia, was sitting there smiling. And she was like, this is, I really didn't expect you to be this calm either. Who knew you would be so calm? And I informed her that just because my physical might be calm does not translate to my thoughts at all. Because anybody with common sense would be capable to understand that I'd have every right to be enraged. Every capacity. So this is why I don't understand why anybody would ever make that mistake again. Because that's what it carried. And so, you would think that those 10 commandments would be important to follow in those references regarding me. In that consideration. Because that would be intelligent. In my opinion. Because I don't like games. And so she was surprised that I was not in a good mood. And so, then I realized I should have a cigarette. And I lit 2. 1 for each hand, because I was very upset. I ripped out the filter though. At first, this is how infuriatingly enraged I was actually. For those who know how it is to take a filter out, to still have the little bit of paper for like a lucky strike sort of situation. And so I did that and ripped the paper so that I could pack it a little bit, and then lit my cigarette so that I could do that with the other one, because I was a little upset, a little bit, just a little bit, by a lot. Had one in each hand, and so as Erica continued to explain herself, well, I smoked those cigarettes very quickly. I didn't know I could take such a deep breath, pun intended. And so after she continued on and explained more, which for some reason I just can't remember what she said, because I was still processing the first part. And so I had smoked both cigarettes to the very end and done. And it didn't take many puffs. No, it was like 5 puffs maximum. And then before she could finish, then I decided to give my viewpoint. And I'd been a little upset. I had raised my voice slightly in comparison to the way I actually can raise my voice. And she just she was surprised. I didn't care. I didn't understand how she could be surprised either. However, it was as it was. So I went on this tirade because why would you be competitive in that capacity? Because in what is supposed to be the consenting adult lifestyle, in the swinger as well as BDSM, unless there is a stated competition where you're actually informed, there's no reason to have a competition, in my opinion, because you're just supposed to be capable to enjoy yourself and relax, and get to know people, and if something occurs in a positive way, maybe it can progress forward, stuff like that. And if you're in the professional aspects, whatever side, whether swinger or adult consenting lifestyle, however that would be in the consideration compared to the, professional aspects of the BDSM side, if you're going to go to a competition, you could do it, I'm sure, in the lifestyle aspects, as far as what's supposed to be the adult consenting lifestyle. Though I'm sure I wouldn't be surprised if in the, professional aspects there is that as well. I can understand in regards of Club Sapphire that being different in the supposed to be consenting adult lifestyle in comparison to the professional aspects. I could understand that. And so, but I'm not a professional. And because of how I am and who I am, just not something I'm interested in regards of competition. It's just in the lifestyle where it's supposed to be a consenting adult lifestyle. I have gone to different events to be capable to have discussions with people because of, at those times, being a mom. I wanted to be capable to just talk with people, but wear outfits that I actually wanted to. I didn't play games, I wasn't looking for that, and so I figured, maybe in the capacities of the possibilities, but not really looking, other than just being around biological adults So there's that clarification in a safe as possible location-ish, acknowledging, knowing there's certain whatever, and doing what I could as far as that capacity for myself, while keeping my children at those times when they were minors, of course, out of that, but being capable to just discuss, because I knew I wasn't the only parent in the lifestyle of what's supposed to be a consenting adult lifestyle. And so, just in those references and comparison. And, similar to certain spiritual aspects such as shamanism, how certain individuals had to explain things to different levels because of the reality, and other factors as far as accepted religions, those capacities. In addition to, even psychology at one point in time wasn't ever considered to be worthwhile. They needed certain factors, and so, my work in comparison. And so, my work, my copyrights, my work, my background. Yeah. And so, because why would I? Anyway, because what would be any different than my dead ex-husband when he was alive? If it wasn't done correctly, because why would that be important? Just breast cancer research that I came up with. But, what would be different or exactly the same? What would be problematic about that, though? Those references. Because, I hate games. In every way, shape, and form. Yeah. And then with the connection to my biological mother, biological father, and biological sister, as well as ex-in-laws, what would that problem be? Because what would be important about correct recognition and the correct capacities, especially when you take in consideration the knowledge of the technological factors. And so, because what would it ever be? Because it's not something I haven't ever not known. It's one of those, what would it be to actually have the correct recognition and the correct capacities instead of other people thinking that their way would be better? Instead, because why would I ever want that 151 road warrior type of situation regarding that? Because anybody that would think that that would be ideal wouldn't have the intellect or common sense ever at all. And so, had to do these updates and clarifications and verifications and, be smarter to do things in the correct way instead of those other ways. But, I haven't ever officially in the correct capacities ever had that at all, because it would be a requirement in what would be considered genuinity, in reality, in comparison to what I would not ever be a willing participant in, because otherwise that'd be like nothing that would ever be worthwhile to me. Because it would be a game, and games are not worthwhile to me at all, whatsoever. Because remember, the one and only time Well, there are two options, and two options only. Well, guess I'll do that, because that's the only option for me. And so, because I'm not willing to have that needless garbage, needless drama be a thing. I'm about life. That's not a life. That's a game. Games are not life. I didn't ever think that biological adults would actually have to have that as an explanation. Ever. Whatsoever in any capacity. And since I only gave birth to 2 children, no more than that, I just don't play games at all. And I will refute them. I will rebuke them. I will absolutely refuse them in every capacity. At all costs. Because why would I ever find any worth or value to that in any capacity? That wouldn't be of any value to me, in the slightest. That wouldn't show actual appreciation for my work, because there's only the one way that would actually show that to me. And that would be my way, which would translate to actually having that etiquette and respect to actually ask me what that would be, using audible words. But then, I just don't know anybody in person, face to face, in person, in regards to, after that situation in the state of Texas from 2019 through 2021. Because why would it be to just ask? Again, similarly regarding my scuba diving and my work, what would it be to take the most simple and easy way possible to just ask? Me, in person, face to face in person, what would it actually take to actually do that? Apparently, that's saying I don't know anyone that had that pride in that state to actually do so. Did the little 151 Road Warrior Mad Max thing in comparison, and then whatever possibilities hypothetically in the Washington State area and during my Medal of Honor art project trips, which what would ever be of any actual, where I would view it as in the correct capacity, because why would that be mandatory in comparison to those types instead? And so, because why would that be important in this lecture? It would be important overall because of doing things correctly. I'm kind of the type of person who doesn't like half-assing. So games are half-assing. It's the way I view life. If you'd rather play a game, you are lazy. You are slothful. You are wasteful. Because you are literally wasting your own life in that capacity. I mean, just the facts. And so why would I ever believe in anything that would have ever been worthwhile regarding my work? Why would I ever believe that anybody took my work seriously either? Because without the actual aspects of though noticing certain things, what would ever be where I would actually have that? In comparison to the traffic issues in the state of Montana in 2017. And those other needless problems throughout when volunteering at Sapphire. What would ever be of value or worth to that? All that needless stress, all those needless problems, if accurate. What would ever actually show me that my work was actually appreciated in comparison? Because if you would think, that would require you to be honest with me. And if any location, especially, using Discordia or Erica as an example for a lesson, why would you go on that route? Wouldn't you think it would be smarter than that to actually be honest in those 10 Commandments instead? I suppose if I'm accurate regarding the modern day book, apparently not. Because if it was, it would be easy to make the correct choice instead. Because if it was similar to that, which I already dealt with regarding my biological mother, biological father, and biological sister, as well as my ex-in-laws, and then each and every individual associated with Discordia or Erica, after all these other factors, how weak would all of those people be to do that? What weaknesses within their own internal view of themselves as to their own self-worth would there be? How minuscule would their own capabilities to be capable to speak in genuinity and truth with me instead of stirring up needless drama? Because stirring up needless drama is easy. I mean, that's just from what I've read. So in comparison, for if you want to show strength and fortitude, I mean, if it's actually difficult for you to live by the 10 Commandments, well then what's strength and fortitude? Instead, I would pretty much put that as that in comparison of, doing a copycat of that Mad Max, Alamo Draft House, 151 Road Warrior situation. Because I didn't find any respect in that. And as I've explained, in regards to situations during that time frame, as well as after, and then modern day book and the updates referencing my journal blog, The Ornery PSA, and my website, www.susaneeling.com, that is something that I had not seen any value or worth to other than a lesson. Nothing more. So, those who have actually, I guess, would there ever have been anyone that I actually knew? In person, face to face in person, in genuine truth. At any point in time, with that going on. And then Mike, Anna, and Patricia, and my ex-in-laws. what would ever have been in truth? Not just for myself, but for each of those individuals to take in consideration of any connections in those regards. What could if knowingly being a part of that, what would you be capable to think about that you could actually truthfully believe? I know I can only follow the 10 Commandments, but that's me in comparison. And so that is what it is. But in those references, what would that be? How many people, how many connections, and all that sort of stuff? What length of time? And then, what would be the intrinsic value in those regards? What type of a life would that actually be when you think about the length of time and the different situations and how many factors and whichever connections that each individual would know of their own? Correct? See, this is why I didn't get into acting. This is why the improv aspect, I was not certain I would ever be interested in. So while I could do it in that area, once I was out of that area, it was over. So if those types of people can't put that together, that once I was outside of that, that was the end of that, then there's those factors. Because then what does that say in regards of those types, such as reenactors, getting involved with what is supposed to be the consenting adult lifestyle? Because what needless problems could come from people such as the Excalibur Fair situation. Though Sherwood Forest Fair, or whatever it turned into thereafter. Because if there is not the capability to have the intellect to distinguish someone who does not play games, doesn't find anything worthwhile, doesn't find anything impressive in the slightest, doesn't see any value or worth to it, to be honest, what would that translate? If there would be more in the lifestyle that's supposed to be a consenting adult lifestyle. So that would translate to the only way it can be a consenting adult lifestyle is if there's informed consent. If there is not the informed consent, then there is no consent. So that would translate to each and every individual that would have known specifically in the what is supposed to be considered consenting adult lifestyle locations. What would that translate to? And then what knowledge and understanding as to? Because then what does that translate to? How important would that be when you know for a fact you cannot prevent anybody from having a head injury? How important would that be? Since Iowa 2018 went hypothetically the way it did, but there is the facts in regards of the zapping situations that I was dealing with that I did discuss in Washington State that, similarly to anything else, such as my scuba diving, what would common sense be to just ask me in genuine truth How difficult is it? You know, I saw this situation at a dance club, and two people, they had supposedly, I guess, recognized one another, though one was possibly confused, and then they confirmed it, and then whatever. It was great to see. How fantastic. Don't know with each of them whether or not one did or didn't have a head injury, though what does that show you? That reference of humanity is what it is, because, you know, why would anybody be arrogant to contact anybody that wouldn't be just directly asking me in regards to Sapphire? Because what invasion of privacy would that be to utilize the emergency contact, whatever, and stir up needless drama? Because then, would that translate to somebody from Sapphire literally using the emergency contact to go and then contact in the private life and stir up needless drama? Because what problem would that be if someplace such as would actually do so? I mean, there was a point where I was informed, and I don't remember ever bringing up Ruby's name, where how my son and I wound up in Washington State. He actually used, I didn't ever talk about Ruby. I had talked about Ray and Deb because I had gone through that process. And so anybody else, I just said, I know a guy, or I know. And so his response was, you know, Ruby has issues. Why would Ruby's name come out of his mouth? What would that be? If the owner's girlfriend, whatever, contacted instead, because what would that problem be in what is supposed to be the consenting adult lifestyle? What type of needless problem would that translate to? For somebody who claimed to have been in the lifestyle back in the 1970s or 1980s or 1990s. What type of issues would that be considered as? In a larger capacity? Because I can't be the only one who could see a massively huge problem with that type. Because why would you be such a tattletale and then expect leading by example? What would be problematic in those references? Because why would that be a problem at all? So if that's the case in the hypothetical of, let's say, some people from Sapphire, such as, actually contacted, was I doing anything incorrect? Or was there the complaints that because I made a choice, my body, my choice, and she was dealing with, why would she deal with complaints? Because what would ever make anybody, yet again, what would be that problem regarding those types? How dare I actually command that you, if you are interested in me, you speak with me with etiquette and respect, in genuine truth? What is the problem with that in what is supposed to be the consenting adult lifestyle? What would there be offensive? That I would not ever allow myself to assist someone to cheat on their spouse if I picked up on that energetic aspect, or girlfriend, or what have you. If there was actually that level of, or whatever in those capacities. Would you actually complain in what is supposed to be the consenting adult lifestyle that I actually have standards? Because if in reference to each and every situation of, because of what my personal requirements are, would it actually be where people in what is supposed to be the adult consenting lifestyle as to my minimum requirements, what would that translate to if you were to complain because you made a choice that instead of speaking with me in truth, that you would ever have any rights that you wouldn't have to be upset? Why would you ever be so arrogant enough to think that your physical features would be enough for me? Because if you would think that your physical features would be enough, what would be problematic in that reference? Because if that's your viewpoint of what is supposed to be considered the adult consenting lifestyle, then you have plenty of others to choose from who would fall in that category. Because I am not that type. I actually have to have certain requirements met. And that has nothing to do with the actual physical for that type of a connection. So if you do not speak with me in honesty and truth, you are denying yourself that connection. So if in those references, whether throughout the state of Texas and or Washington State, then who would there be to blame for the facts if that is the situation that there were complaints because my right to choose and my right to set standards for myself because of my own health care for myself and my maintaining and sustaining my well-being? Because what would be problematic if people who were lying were actually upset that I wouldn't want to because of if I picked up on their lying and stirring up needless drama? Because why would that ever be something I would want when I've made it abundantly clear? Would it be arrogance to think that just because I authored fiction genre books, that lack of capability to distinguish would be from other people as to the genre? How important would that be? So if it were that there over the years were complaints because of other people's choices in what is supposed to be the adult consenting lifestyle, with the knowledge that I was born and raised in New Jersey, and having grown up going around the tri-state area in the 1980s and 1990s, what lack of common sense would you have to not pay attention to the time frame of the 1980s and 1990s? Was it not known to other people? Is that a secret that nobody else knew about? Is that some brand new historical fact that all of a sudden I was the only one who knew that that occurred? Or was it the arrogance that I dealt with in the state of Texas? Oh, you're young. Oh, you're young. That was, that was before you were an adult. What did that matter, if that's the case? Why would there even have to be any sexuality in that reference? To just know. I mean, I did earn 26 scuba diving certifications in less than a 10-month time period. I had earned my graduation despite the situations that were going on in my daughter and my son and I's lives. In regards of, so if that was scuba divers in the civilian recreational area of scuba diving, being upset because why would you ever ask by taking the binkies out of your mouth in regards to, because why would that ever matter? And why would you ever think that a class, this goes back to the way I was raised. Because I was raised, you get your education. Not there for the other factors up. So if there were those and those references that could have been interested, guess what you should have done? You should have asked me out on a date. But apparently, that lack of common sense, I suppose, would be a problem. Because it would be the same in reference to my work. The lack of common sense to actually just ask me. And honest, but you'd actually have to be honest in comparison. And since I had taught during almost each and every one of my 26 scuba diving certifications, with the exception, literally with the exception of my cavern scuba diving, and assisted in regards of instruction regarding search, rescue, and recovery, but, only having really learned something as far as non-scuba diving, though scuba diving with my Sunto and diver propulsion certifications because of the technological aspects. Why would that be considered commonplace? Or is that because it's considered the civilian recreational scuba diving, if that's considered a normalcy? Just because of a sexist viewpoint as to the fact of being an unattached female scuba diver. Because I didn't ever have a relationship in scuba diving when I was earning my 26 scuba diving certifications. Not one. Officially, because it had to be in an official context that, it would be known. So, because it wasn't known, because of, a short amount of time after Cozumel. However, because it wasn't official at all, because of the way the situation was, because of what that would require by my standards as to that reference. Since that, after June, wasn't ever official. Just wasn't ever official. And so, sure, went on a couple dates here and there. It wasn't ever officialized, though, by my minimum standards at all. I have requirements for relationships. I have standards. And if I don't have those minimum standards met, when it comes to dating, I'm very specific. All you have to do is just ask me. Because if you don't ask me, you don't get to find out the answers. And that's not my fault in any situation. So if that's an opinion that somebody may have thought otherwise, because then there's the, why would you contact anybody else in regards of me if dating without my permission? What would that translate to? To the knowledge in regards of that I had earned by that point in time 25 scuba diving certifications by myself. Not dating anybody in the scuba diving community. What would that translate to? Maybe it wasn't the 24th and 25th, it might have been the 22nd and 23rd. Nonetheless, it really doesn't matter, realistically, because it wasn't ever official, which would translate to, if it's not officialized, in what are my standards? What would be problematic? Especially in reference to what occurred after I returned back from Florida. So remember, it wasn't ever officialized, didn't ever call each other by that particular terminology, and then as soon as I returned and discussed a little bit, that male ran away. And I did not see him for the time frame from August, the second or third week of, just before my actual birthday, and until he asked to meet with me in November. So, what would be important at all? In any capacity. So didn't see him, nothing, that whole thing. And yeah, then there's the cavern excursions location, where I informed that scuba diving location that I had been the one who landed at the bottom of the ocean at the Vandenberg. Did International Scuba do anything as far as actual celebration? Or even a congratulations? To me, for my work, no is the answer to this lecture. There's not any point in time. So it's not acceptable by proxy. It's not acceptable in any other way than directly. It is literally scuba diving. I wouldn't think it would be that difficult to figure that out. That there would only be one way, and one way only. Again, today is the 2nd of May, 2022. There hasn't been anything of value or worth, apparently. Because why would I ever see that? What's so difficult? It's going on 13 years now. What would that matter? After 13 years, on all of my other work, who would there be to ever actually speak with? You know, in the capacity of my preference. Because why would that matter? Other than it's my work. So it would only be allowed in my preference because of it being my work. So if it's not done in my preference, why would I care to discuss it at all? Or in this case, lecture about it? Because why would I care? If there hasn't been the actual correct, genuine concern in the respectful ways thereof, in etiquette and respect, why would I care what somebody else might wish? What would be important about that? I mean, it's just my work. Or is it because of the way I physically look? Is it because of the lack of the title of being an instructor, other than having actually instructed in several of my 26 scuba diving certification courses? All you have to do is look at the 26 scuba diving certifications that I earned. If any of them, those individuals are not specifically certified in that specialty, then by technicalities, what would that translate to? The answer for this lecture is that I did my work myself. And they just signed off on that. Because what would they be capable to know at those times? What would that matter anyway? You know, those needless drama types. So then if there's the needless problems from Cactus Jack, also known as Jeffrey Kirkendall Jr., because of the needless problems of those types, and how I would not ever consent, and the knowledge of how that went in the garage. As to those factors, and the knowledge of the reality as to how I wound up off of the military installation with the subarachnoid hemorrhage in the frontal lobe of my brain, those hospitalizations at Wilford Hall, what would that translate to? Let me know when I'm supposed to believe that, well, a lot, as far as actual care in the correct way. You know I didn't graduate basic training, but what did I ever do that was actually worthwhile? You know, realistically. And I'm not asking rhetorically, I'm actually asking seriously in this lecture. Because genuinely, I can't think of anything that I've done that's actually worthwhile. Because in order for that to occur, by what other people have shown me, the only way that you ever know that something is worthwhile is when there's the actual proof. And so, sure, I know what I've done, though the proof would translate to the correct recognition and the correct capacities, etiquette and respect, As far as my books, my royalty checks, those factors, for my usage only, by my choice, because otherwise there's nothing that I see that's of any value or worth at all in any capacity. I mean, while some people might think so, how many decades at this point? So all of those tiny aspects have added up. And so all of those tiny portions have created a boulder, and yet all of those aspects are just that. So all of those situations, you can either take in consideration, yeah, sure, I did as I did. However, every one of those situations, there hasn't ever been anything celebrated where I actually got to celebrate. You know, but that would require certain factors instead. So there hasn't been that at all, ever. So if other people told you they did so, through my updates of my journal blog, The Ornery PSA, on my website, www.susanmealing.com, I wouldn't have gone on about it not having occurred if it actually had. So since it has not occurred, no matter what anybody wishes to try to claim, I can only speak in truth. So, facts. There hasn't been one aspect in regards of what I actually consider as work at all. And not by my standards. Not that anybody's asked. That would require common sense. So, you know, what's justice for me as far as what I have survived and dealt with? I guess that would require that same thing in comparison to a lecture, because I just really don't care to lecture. Unlike some people that might think that would be important, again, it goes to what I think in comparison. And since there hasn't been anything at all whatsoever that has been officially informed to me in the correct capacities, whether in reference to military, law enforcement, fire department, EMS, or more specifically for all of these civilians who have done so much in your little participation trophies. How difficult it must be. That must be as hollow as you are, those participation trophies. Because common sense would be, after everything in these capacities, why would you waste so much time? Unless it goes to those hollow, wasteful games. Because those wasteful times, in comparison to actually doing something worthwhile, to my opinion, by my preference of what I actually prefer, instead of these lectures. Because that doesn't do anything for me that I personally would find worthwhile. by my standards as to what I would find is worthwhile. Again, that would be the equivalent. So these lectures, so you know, are the equivalent of that 151 Road Warrior Mad Max Alamo Draft House, in my opinion. That's what I view that as, because of what my preferences are in comparison. So, as much stuff has occurred for so many others, why would I ever see anything that would actually be worthwhile from what I've done? It's the facts. Nothing different from my childhood. Nothing different from my teenage years. Nothing different from after waking up from my coma after my Palm Sunday 2000 head injury. At all. Just nothing different. Realistically, the only thing different are the names, the faces, the locations. Physically, obviously, taller, and my hair, all that, since I was a child. Whoop-de-doo. When everything else is just the same, gets really old, as far as all those factors. Nothing new. Dealt with this as a child and a teenager. So, while some people, regarding the COVID thing, if I wouldn't do certain things, what do you think I dealt with if you've met Mike, Anna, and or Patricia? How would you be no different as far as that's concerned? The answer for this lecture is you wouldn't. I mean, unless I were to actually get my royalty checks for my usage of my finances, and then my recognition for my work. That's the only way that would ever be considered different from my childhood. Oh, and people speaking with me in actual truth, in person, face to face, in person, instead. That would be different. That would be new, where there was actual truth and etiquette and respect. That would be different, completely. I haven't ever had that, apparently, at all. You know, those verifications and clarifications. Nothing new. So, as a teenager, when I was in Illinois, I tried explaining to Mike that I had a vision where I had in the mirror that was in the bedroom, the closet, I was actually doing this argument and actually scolding these judge aspects and informing them where every failure was in every capacity. And this was back in 1998. I was actually practicing in this vision because I could see, because I was making attempts in this practice to explain. So that way I could show him what I was referring to, and he tried to claim the same thing I dealt with. Finding a silver lining. I explained this. Back in 1998, 1999, 2004. It's not the same size as the mirror squares, but there's these stupid little speckles on the countertop that look in a different capacity to that hideous closet that was the area of my room that I had painted the walls. A light, very light pastel green with a dark velvet green curtain with white doily type in between the window in what was my bedroom at that house in that location. So there goes to that portion in second grade of my vision, nightmare and all that. How many times of accuracy? Oh look, it's literally exactly what I told Mike and Anna back then, yet again. What would actually be different? Actually not dealing in any capacity whatsoever with Mike or Anna or Patricia in any way, shape, or form. Not just in person, face-to-face in person, in regards of everything. In every way. That would include my work, and they would stay out of my finances, and my finances would only be my finances for me to use without their involvement at all. Any of their whatevers would stay out of my way. And I'd actually maybe get to actually enjoy life for once instead. Because there's nothing enjoyable to me about this. Just another day. Because it's just another day. Nothing worthwhile to what I would view as worthwhile. So, even in reference to Dinwiddie, Virginia, same vision because of how I saw it. So I explained that, and those people had forgotten about my warnings in regards of Old Tenet Presbyterian Church. At what point in time do those types of people, including my ex-in-laws, and civilian recreational scuba divers, and each and every person who has been wrong about me, throughout the state of Texas, Illinois, New Jersey, everywhere, when do you finally accept that you pushed me too far because of your childish, needless games? Because where have you gotten special treatment in a more positive way compared to what I've dealt with? Instead, I haven't seen anything of value or worth to me as far as what I would consider as, for me, in the ways I specifically prefer. So, for my work of what I have put together, for me, instead of other people involving themselves without being invited by the one and only. And all you had to do was use the 2 contact form. Our website, www.susanmeeling.com. It's literally a 2 contact form to actually speak with me. That's the easiest way. But then those types of that exit 200 and that laziness Because don't make the mistake as to what I wrote in reference to finding a silver lining about the 35 southbound. Don't ever make that mistake when it comes to my work. It's a huge difference. That would be a massively huge mistake, to ever think that that would be acceptable to me. Because that's a huge difference. Obviously. That would be if there was common sense, though, and not artificial intelligence. Because why would you think that would be the exact same thing in regards of all of my other work? That would just be a slothful, prideful way. Realistically, vanity, envy, greed, pride, just would be so worthless. Because why would I ever see any actual appreciation when there hasn't been? To what, again, I would consider as. So while I don't need pomp and circumstance in those references, the best way would actually have been my royalty checks to use my way, how I prefer. That would have been the best way. It would actually show that my work was actually worthwhile. For me to use my finances my way without any restrictions, without any people involving themselves. That royalty check stuff, that would actually show me that in comparison. Otherwise, I wasn't seeking anything other than that. Though in reference to my scuba diving, that's a different capacity altogether. So, over my Medal of Honor art project, after those trips and those situations of those needless problems, well, you know what? If I actually had my royalty checks with my finances for me to be capable to use, I would actually be capable to arrange that myself in a way that would actually be correct in comparison. Because what would someone who would not have the background that I have ever have any intellect to? Unless you would think ignorantly and wouldn't take my work seriously. Because why would you? If you didn't take my work seriously in reference to my scuba diving, why would you take my work seriously in reference to my Medal of Honor art project? Because that would be common sense. If you didn't take my work seriously regarding my website and my journal blog and my books, why would you ever think you would know anything about my Medal of Honor art project work? Because you would actually have to take that seriously in the correct capacities. Well, how would I actually have that site? As many of you play video games and computer games, what would be important about my royalty checks as far as that site? Because that would be common sense. Especially as many of you there are that do that. What level of lack of common sense would you actually have to not put that together? Why would you think the site would be better in that reference? Would you think that high of yourself? Or, let me guess, it has to do with not being capable to tell the difference between the name in the actual genre at the same time of the name in the title of the book. And then wishing that that would be good enough instead of what actually would have been perfect. Because why would you think role-playing when I don't like games would ever be something I would like when I love that in every capacity? Unless you wouldn't believe how much I actually loathe it. And you would think that you could try to convince me otherwise instead. If that was the case, it's now 2022 in May on the 2nd. If this was started regarding that guardian asshole garbage as to trying to ever think that would be good enough. Well, that's 2015 to 2022. Or by technicalities, 2014 since the copyright. So 2014 to 2022, that's 8 years. 8 years. What a waste of time. 8 years since the copyrights. That's just ew regarding that. So if there were those that wished that, oh, she'll figure it out and then all of a sudden she'll appreciate it because of that garbage, in reference to that one role-playing game, and then that similarity regarding that stuff, just because of a Mandarin view, because I create my outfits how I create my outfits, what would be wrong with you? What would be what I brought up earlier? As far as the updating to my journal blog, the Ornery PSA, on my website, www.susanmealing.com. You know what? I would guesstimate if this was the little role-playing garbage, as far as that sort of stuff, you know what? I would guesstimate that question I asked Governor Christine Todd Whitman about the problem as far as the mental health crisis. You know what? I think I found the root cause. Those types of people who do the reenacting garbage, that do the role-playing game crap, instead of living real life. Because they haven't had the capacity and the conjunction of adding the pop culture references of all those books instead of actually reading fact-based books and distinguishing the difference between fact and fiction. And then all of those pop culture TV shows, movies, streaming now, and those references, because those documentaries are different, where you actually learn something and actually can be educated instead of those needless games. You know what? For once, I can actually give an example where I'm actually appreciative to Mike and Anna. There were people in Crystal Lake South who invited me to a game of Dungeons and Dragons. Matt and Valerie. Matt was in college. Valerie was in high school. The one in regards of the Robin Hood play, Morrison. All right. And this was 1998, if I remember, going into 1999. And I told Anna and Mike, and Anna said, no. You can go to watch, but that Dungeons and Dragons, your Uncle Neil had a lot of problems. And Mike said, it is what it is. It's no big deal if you whatever, but, just be safe, whatever. And I decided just not to play. I decided I'd look at the book, and read through. It was just boring to me. I didn't understand why they even wanted to. Because I watched what they were doing. It was a group of about 7, 8 people, and they were just sitting and doing whatever on an apartment floor in whatever area of Crystal Lake. And it was just, this is what this is. And they were like, yeah, and I didn't actually get to see anything really. And it was just, ew, this is boring. And so I told them I didn't ever want to be a part of that ever again. And Matt had actually gotten offended. He was offended that I didn't find anything worthwhile to the Dungeons and Dragons game. And he tried to explain that he felt that role-playing was important. And I didn't see how. And so Valerie tried to explain how Matt was whatever, and I had informed her that I wasn't interested in that. And while I can acknowledge whatever as far as my biological mother and biological father, as to differences of opinion, I didn't see anything worthwhile, because the entire time they were doing that, there was so much other stuff that could have been done instead. Could have gone elsewhere, could have done whatever, all sorts of stuff. And it didn't even require finances, which is the other factor to take in consideration regarding the role-playing situation, but it was as it was in that capacity. And so if this has anything to do with the same aspects of those people, all this length of time, because, I had other things to do with my life instead. I wasn't born and raised in Crystal Lake. I was born and raised in New Jersey, and grew up going throughout the tri-state area. There was this situation in 2012, Mike and Patty's, after the Midnight Rodeo thing, for that additional factor. And so, that amount of needless garbage, I reiterate. So, that Zelda irony of ironies. However, whatever on that. Or what I would be capable to express: pizza, for those who would understand. Pizza. At this point in time, just pizza. To those types. And the situations and what I've dealt with. Needlessly. So, go to my website, www.susanmeling.com, and make sure to subscribe to my official YouTube channel and like my official YouTube videos for my official YouTube channel. Ew, in regards to those types. Fully. Yeah, that was Dungeons and Dragons and Warhammer and ew. Just ew. Personal opinion. But again, I grew up in a way where that wasn't allowed, and those types of people who think they know someone better than they do. so if this has been one of those situations, now you know I wasn't ever interested, honestly, in regards of that Dungeons and Dragons game. It actually did not have anything to do with Mike or Anna or Patricia. It had everything to do with how I didn't like games. At all. Whatsoever. So if this was in regards of those people, how many times does that have to be explained until you people actually learn that with all that sort of stuff, life is not an actual game? Maybe you needed the board game to be capable to distinguish that physical representation. But then those types of people who would go and do the digital version, because why would you pay attention to common sense? Because you didn't think it was going to go that way? Look at what happened with the Pokemon Go. How many people got hit by cars because of not paying attention to detail? Think about that. So when people were playing the Pokemon Go and people were walking and fell into a sewer, or people were walking and didn't pay attention, all these things, at what point in time does the video game industry actually get held accountable? They have been brought forward since the 1980s and 1990s about these problems as to the warnings in regards of news reports. When do the pop culture references in regards of Hollywood actually get held accountable for their involvement as far as these situations? Because you have the Alamo Draft House regarding Mad Max and the 151 Road Warriors. When does that actually get taken into consideration regarding those role-playing games as to an actual warning where you actually have to be held accountable? Instead, what about those, Excalibur fair situations? When does that actually become where those types of people are held accountable? Because while you have Disney, and Disney is a specific location in comparison to these Excalibur fair or Sherwood Forest or whatever types, in comparison, when you have the natural in comparison to where when you go to Disney in that factor and it's specific, or Six Flags Great America or Great Adventure, whatever, in those regards, instead of this stuff. What is it to act? Liberty Science Center is literally in a specific location. These different aspects are. This is what I genuinely believe. In this culmination, there has to be that to be thought about. In genuinity. Because you have people going and doing civilian recreational scuba diving, and they have been willing to go scuba diving in underground missile silos. I swear, if there are any of those pop culture references regarding that sort of stuff, what does it take to actually raise the common sense factors? Realistically. Because if there are pop culture references regarding that sort of stuff. At what point in time? Because why should I have to deal with all of the stuff that I've had to deal with? Realistically, at what point in time does that actually get fixed and repaired correctly? Because if that has been a thing in a pop culture thing where, there's the versions of YOLO, what does that matter about the water supply to drink? If they go scuba diving in an underground missile silo because they think they're going to go do something inspired some sort of whatever regarding those pop culture references. Yay! In the civilian recreational scuba diver sector. Well, it'd be important about my work actually correctly being recognized in comparison. Sure, I physically look as I do. Why is that? Maybe, just maybe, it's something important to think about. A few things to take in consideration. So go to my website, www.susanmealing.com. Subscribe to my official YouTube channel and like my official YouTube videos. If you're going to comment, please do have actual etiquette and respect. Share the links to my official YouTube videos for my official YouTube channel. That's what it's translated for each and every one of my official YouTube videos. That's what that translation has always been. You wonder why there are so many laws? Maybe if you actually just had common sense and, those factors. Maybe laws wouldn't have to be written so much. With those types. Not do that sort of stuff, that wish and stuff and all that garbage. Well, you didn't say these words and you didn't say these words. No. Because when you have the definition of you wishing that cherubim garbage in reference to those Mandarin aspects literally proves what I have brought forward since before I wound up in Washington State, the year 2013. Literally. If anybody tries to complain and tries to say certain words or certain phrases or whatever, you literally are those people. You literally are, and you know you are. You know you are, just accept it. So whatever you were called, as far as that was concerned, just accept that that is who you are. Just accept it. Especially with the verifications and clarifications and proof. In truth. Because I'm sure there's more than just one or two reference points. Especially if this has been going on since 1998. And or before. So you just think about that. Just think about how much time, if it's been going on, let's say it's only been going on since 1998. That's 24 years. What could you have actually accomplished in comparison? That would actually benefit society in a positive way. Sometimes profits are important. There's no denying that. But so are ethics and morals. Pointing that out there. Especially with some of that Dungeon Dragon stuff that I read about you'd think with that factor, you would be thinking about space stuff. And that. I mean, it's literally a printed out book. I don't know how difficult that would be to figure that out. And then the internet development. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm the only one who's had common sense this whole time. Maybe common sense really truthfully is a superpower. I don't know. I suppose. I don't know. You guys have a good day. But think about that. In regards of the oldest, what's the term? Players? Think about that. Think about that, the oldest players and the length of time. Comparison to accomplishments or actually elevating in the proper ways. Comparison. Why would people not take certain things seriously if all they're shown is YOLO garbage? You really think about it. Maybe if they actually saw more stuff where people who actually did positive stuff, they'd actually be inspired, where they'd get that recognition and the correct capacities instead of sneaking around in those regards. Or that Montana 2017 traffic situation, or etc. Maybe that would be something to consider instead. Lead by examples of pretty simple saying. And so just think, after waking up from my coma, if you don't like my saying, or you don't like the complimentary satire book, Finding the Silver Lining, well, by the examples, what would be led there? Just think. That's the average, now wouldn't it be? Have a great day. But think about that. The 2nd of May, 2022.